Family SUVs are a lot like Sunday roasts. Loads of us love them, they need them, but we like them in different flavours. Some proper wrong-uns think cauliflower cheese is a vital part for Sunday roast. They're wrong. All you really need, as we all know, unlimited Yorkshire puddings, gravy and mashed potato. Controversial, but true. In this video, we're going to be comparing the Kia Sportage. That's your crazy aunt who doesn't even like pigs in blankets, against the Volkswagen Tiguan. That's your straight-laced granddad who likes beef, horseradish and nothing fancy. But anyway, I'm getting quite hungry, so let's get on with the video. This Kia Sportage is about 18 months old. It's got just under 12,000 miles on the clock, and it's on sale at Motorpoint for just over £25,000 or £339 a month on a finance deal. This Tiguan is a similar price. It's actually a grand more. It's also twice the age of the Sportage. This one is 3 years old, and it's got 20,000 more miles on it than the Kia. It is in top spec R-Line trim, and just for reference, that Sportage is in mid-spec 3 trim. Let's get on with it. Now we're going to talk about looks, sticking with the Tiguan. And I know looks are subjective, like your dad's browser history, but I think this looks nice and understated, quite premium, quite posh. And yes, the new Tiguan came out in 2024, but it doesn't look as good as this. I think this looks better. But anyway, being an R-Line version, you've got 20-inch wheels, you've got really sharp daytime running lights. It looks premium and understated. The Kia, meanwhile, it looks mad, it looks futuristic. To be honest, it looks a bit like something you'd find on the front cover of a magazine under teenage ET's bed. But yeah, I think it's kind of attractive. This 3 model gets 18-inch alloy wheels. You can get 19s on top spec GTS, but that's still an inch smaller than what we've got over on the Tiguan. I quite like it. My only concern is it's been out for 3 years, and I think it might already be starting to look a little bit dated. Don't think it's as timeless as the Tiguan. You do get a load of kit as standard in the Sportage. Now, on a mid-spec 3 car like this, you've got a big 12-inch infotainment system. It hasn't got wireless CarPlay or Android Auto. You have to plug in to use them. But when you do plug in, it's really big, it's very bright, it's very sharp, and it is easy to use as well. You've got a 12-inch digital dashboard as well. In lower spec models of the Sportage, like the 2 and the GT line, you actually get analog rev counter and speedo dials with a little digital screen in the middle. Doesn't look quite as nice as this does. Otherwise, I've got heated steering wheel, radar cruise control, heated seats. I haven't got an automatic gearbox, but you can get one of those. I've got loads of storage, a big bin here, space my sunglasses there, a cup holder, a big full width glove box, hooray. And yeah, it's just a really nice car. Downside, the door bins aren't lined with felt, which sounds like a really minor whinge, but it does mean things will rattle around. And the Tiguan, as we're about to find out, has felt lined. Yes, the door bins in the Tiguan are felt lined, so stuff won't rattle around. The Tiguan's interior does beat the Sportage's in some key areas, mostly storage. There are a few extra bins that the Sportage doesn't have, so I've got a felt lined one up here. I've got a sunglasses holder here. I've got a bit more space down here for cup holders, and that's about the same size as the Sportage's. But actually, I have to say, the rest of the cabin is not as good in my book. I've got a smaller digital dashboard, that's fine. I've got basically a horse-drawn cart of an infotainment system. It's 8 inches, it looks pathetically small. It has got wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, which the Kia doesn't, but it looks and feels quite old. It's fast enough and it will do the job, but having been in that, this feels a bit naff, to be honest. Otherwise, I've got some of the same features. I've got heated seats, I've got a heated steering wheel, but the steering wheel has gone shiny at 30,000 miles, and it's got the annoying haptic button, so you can accidentally put your heated steering wheel on when you're turning and things like that. So I'm going to give the win for the interior to the Kia Sportage. While the front of the Tiguan's cabin might be a little bit soggy carrot, back here it's honey roast parsnip. It's really good. I've got loads of space for my legs, loads of space for my feet, and my head as well. And then I can give myself less space if I want more boot space by reclining and sliding each of the seats. That's just quite a cool feature. It's quite handy to have. And the door bins back here also felt lined. I've got a single USB-C, which feels a little bit mean, but I've got a 12-volt socket next to it. I've got some climate controls. We have just noticed though, the doors don't open all that wide. So if you're constantly getting big, bulky child seats in and out, Tiguan's actually not quite as practical as we would have liked, but at least the ISOFIX points haven't got annoying flaps on them. It is a pretty decent backseat space. And you've got some storage up here as well for sweets and things like that. Now I'm back in the Sportage, and while the front of the Kia's cabin is definitely better than Tiguan's, it's harder to call when it comes to backseat space, because look, I've actually got a little bit less legroom than in the Tiguan, although it's still decent for my 6'3" lump. I've got footroom, I've got headroom. What I don't have though is sliding seats. These ones, they just recline, which is still useful, but I don't have the ability to make the boot space bigger by sliding them out the way. I've got one more USB-C though than in the Volkswagen. They're here on the backs of the front seats. I don't have a 12 volt, but I've got some cubby holes. No third zone of climate control back here, and the door bins aren't felt lined, and they're a bit smaller as well. And actually, it does feel a little bit more claustrophobic than in the Tiguan as well. It's all very black. But look at that. The doors open a little bit wider, so getting a child seat in will be marginally easier in this car. The ISOFIX points though, they are just kind of in the cloth. They're not behind covers or anything. They're just there, so that should be easy to get on. And there's less of a hump in the middle of the floor as well. What I would say though is the armrest, not quite as big as the one in the Tiguan. And yeah, still got two plastic cup holders and they're not going to get in your way. Should also point out, you've got coat hangers as standard on the back of the seats in front as well. You don't get those in Das Volkswagen 9. One last thing, this is a mid-spec Sportage and I've got heated outer rear seats. I don't get that as standard on the Tiguan until you add the winter pack, even on the top spec model. Around the back, the Sportage continues the slightly wacky design theme with these jagged rear lights, but there are some nice sensible practicalities as well. Every model gets a reversing camera, unlike the Tiguan. And if you get a top spec Sportage, that's called the GT Line S, you get a 360-degree camera, which if you're like me and rubbish at parking, is quite a handy thing to have. Now it can tow up to 1.65 tons on a brake trailer, but there's no diesel option, so the Tiguan can tow more. We'll get onto that in a minute. Boot space, 562 litres in the Kia. It's a nice wide space. It's got a really nice flat load lip here. It's got handy levers for flipping the rear seats down. And it is actually deeper this way than the boot in the Tiguan, which we'll show you in a second. Under the floor, you've got this kind of polystyrene tray with lots of little places to put stuff, and you've got your tyre gunk kit there as well. No spare wheel. Other things, you've got a 12 volt socket there for powering a cool box. It's a really nice big boot. But let's check out the Volkswagen. Well, the back end of the Tiguan, like the front, looks a little bit more conservative. It's also more conservatively spec'd. You don't get a reversing camera even on this top spec R-Line model, but you do on the equivalently priced Elegance. It's just an option on this one, which is a bit annoying. It can tow more than the Sportage though, because you get a diesel version of this. It can tow up to 2.5 tons in that version, which is way more than in the Sportage. But yeah, no reversing camera. Bit annoying. The boot is a big space. They say 600 litres. That's if you take everything out like you see here. So no boot floor, big load lip. It's actually normally more like 520 litres. And obviously you can slide the rear seats forward to give you the maximum 620 litres of space, but then you've got no rear knee room. Otherwise, it's much the same as the Sportage. You've got some levers here to fold the seats down. You've got a 12 volt socket. It's kind of on a par really with the Sportage. Just have a look in the boots and see which one you prefer, because they're both cavernous. Right, we're going to go for a drive in the Tiguan now, and to be honest, I've just got out of the Sportage and the visibility out of this is quite a bit better, especially out the back corners of the car. The Sportage just feels a little bit more tank-like and you're a bit more sunk inside it. But anyway, let's talk engines. This is 1.5 litre petrol, 150 horsepower. It gets about 35 mpg in the real world. It's meant to get 38. When you put your foot down, it's brisk enough. 0 to 62 is 9 and a bit seconds, but it is a bit coarse when you rev it out. I would get this with a 2 litre diesel. You get 150 horsepower options, probably your best bet. You'll get way more mpg and just have a more relaxed drive as well, because it's a bigger engine and it's a diesel with more torque. There's a plug-in hybrid. That's an old 1.4 petrol engine that can do about 30 miles on a charge. It's okay, but it's front-wheel drive. You can get a higher power diesel with 4-wheel drive, and that's about your lot really. There's no full electric version, and there's no normal hybrid like there is in the Sportage, a self-charging one. Actually, to drive down a country road, this Tiguan feels pretty agile. It's not loads of fun, but it feels grippy, goes where you want it to, and it feels quite light on its toes. The ride is okay. It's a little bit firm on this one with its 20-inch wheels, but it's refined. When you go up to motorway speeds, you get a bit of tyre or not too much wind noise. It's a relaxing motorway cruiser. And obviously you've got lane keep assist that's easy to turn off and all your usual driver aids. But let's hop over into the Kia to see how that compares. It should really be comfier because the wheels are 2 inches smaller. I wonder how the engine feels though, that 1.6 petrol. Let's find out. Right, we're in the Kia Sportage now. I've not even left the car park, and I can tell you this has a much softer, more compliant ride. It's going to iron out bumps better than that Tiguan. Now, I would expect that because this is on 18s, not 20-inch wheels, but it just feels like a more relaxing car to drive. And I know from experience, when you drive on these down a twisty road, it does grip well, but it rolls a bit more in corners than that Volkswagen. It feels a bit less sporty. Personally, for me, when I'm ferrying my 2 young girls around, I don't really want a sporty car. I want comfort, I want refinement. And this is pretty much better than the Tiguan in the ride department. Also at motorway speeds, this is pretty refined as well in terms of wind and tyre noise. Now, I am using a manual gearbox in this car. It's very easy to use and the clutch is very light. I would still rather have the 7-speed dual clutch that Kia offers with this engine, which is a 1.6 petrol with 157 horsepower. It's a little bit slower than the Tiguan. I think it is I think it's 9.8 to 60 rather than 9.2, but in a car like this, it just doesn't matter. The fuel efficiency in the real world is nigh on identical as well to the Volkswagen. This car, over 12,000 miles, has averaged 34 mpg, which is not great, but it's not bad. Petrol SUVs with smallish petrol engines aren't very efficient. Now, there's no diesel option for this, but there is a plug-in hybrid with 260 odd horsepower. That can do about 30 miles of electric driving. And then there's a full hybrid, a self-charging hybrid, which you can't get in the Tiguan. Now, this has got all the usual safety systems, such as lane keeping assist. It's really easy to turn that off. You just hold this button on the steering wheel, so it wins some points over the Tiguan because it's just one less press to do it. And I haven't got the stupid haptic buttons on the steering wheel. For me, driving wise, I think the win is just gonna go to the Sportage. It's not as sporty, ironically, given its name, but just does more of the comfortable, sensible stuff a little bit better. Well done, Kia. So to sum up, if you've got 25 to 26 grand to spend on a used SUV, what are you going to pick? Well, I've been surprised by the differences between these two cars. For me, the Sportage is the higher tech car inside. I prefer the cabin. I like those 2 big screens. It just feels nicer and more modern. This feels a bit drab inside. On the flip side, this is ever so slightly roomier in the back, and you've got those sliding rear seats. The boot is a little bit bigger in this, but on the Sportage's boot front, if you will, the boot's actually a bit easier to use because of that flat floor. I think overall though, it all comes down to one thing I've not mentioned yet. 3-year-old Volkswagen, basically out of warranty. 18-month-old Kia, it's still got 5.5 years left in its warranty. And it's £1,000 cheaper, or 30 quid a month cheaper on finance. So if it was my money, I'd be going Korean and not German. But which would you pick? Tell me down in the comments whether you'd have the Tiguan or the Sportage or something else entirely. Now, hopefully you've liked this video because I've loved making it, apart from this slightly weird shot of my feet, but that's usually reserved for my OnlyFans. Like this video if you've liked it, subscribe to the Motorpoint YouTube channel, go down to the comments, tell us which you'd prefer, and I'll see you next time when I won't be having all this crazy camera work done. What's going on? You cost too much to be doing this, cameraman Ollie.